Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with another Coach Videocast podcast, weekly updates to all of you here on Facebook and across the Endurance Nation News Network to make sure that you are prepared to set yourself up for the best possible season next year. There's a variety of different steps that you can take. In previous episodes, I've talked a little bit around what it means to structure decisions that will allow you to be successful when we come into the next year. A little different approach than what we've typically seen from like a traditional season planning, pick your race, work backwards conversation. And since that approach doesn't initially fit with everyone, I'm working in this conversation as well, just to make sure we cover all the bases with people, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of planning. Okay. So in this episode, when we talk about planning your season, I'm going to cover a little bit of a more traditional approach to lining things up that allows you to stay faithful, right? Have some fidelity towards what makes sense to you as an athlete, but also will give you the perspective and ability to make changes that will help create positive outcomes for you, better outcomes for you across the course of a season. Remember, the number one mistake that athletes make when they plan races is that when they pick that race, they've already got in mind what the performance related to that race is, right? So you're picking a venue, you're picking this marathon, or you're picking this triathlon, or you're picking this ultra race because you've already done the math somewhere inside your head based on those conditions, based on the terrain, based on the data that you've seen. You're going to get something out of it, right? You're going to say, I'm going to put X in and I'm going to get 2X out. Or I'm going to put X in and get half an X out. But you've done that math already inside your head. And it's very important to understand that in that process, by simply allowing that to happen without any additional structure, you are tying yourself to these subconscious goals, which you may or may not be able to meet, and which will ultimately affect your ability to make better decisions across the course of the season at precisely the time that critical decision making is important. So rather than set yourself up for a failure and for a really tough year by just saying, this is my race and it's awesome and I'm going to crush it, we're going to go into a little bit more detail here for you today. Okay. So, first and foremost, let's start with event types. What events do you want to race this year? Is it a triathlon? Is it just running races? Is it multiple different types of events? Is it just cycling? Is it off-road cycling? Do you have a variety of things that you want to partake in? Are some of them races like solo races? Are some of them team events? Or perhaps it's a different type of challenge. Maybe you're going for an FKT, a fastest known time on a particular segment, or you have some other type of goal. Really capture the types of different events that you're doing. This is important because we're going to start to see, even at this macro level, where the overlapping concentric circles are that will allow you to either bundle together those experiences or set them up in such a way to create better conditions for success, right? So you can go food shopping, and when you get home, I can tell you what I wanted. Or we can have a process whereby we talk about all the things that we need, and then you go food shopping. That's what we're doing right now, which is basically saying, how do we organize all the different pieces that are out there on the map? And then we can start to see which ones belong together. Do we batch them? Do we not batch them? How do we organize them structurally? So start off first with event types. It's okay if you just have one. If you're just in a one sport, awesome. If you have multiple, also cool. Put that over here. Both have pros and cons. Both bring different sets of decisions in the second and third order hierarchy. Okay. Okay. Number two, let's define your windows for racing. This is where life comes in. So, aside from whatever your goals may be, whatever your financial budget may be, the next conversation we need to have is what your time budget is. When can you actually race? And not just race as in get in a car or get on a plane and go somewhere to do a race, but when can you actually race at the level with which you expect to perform at that event? As a great example, think about someone who is a teacher, right? Who works on the job, say September through May, June, and then has sort of July, August flexible to do work later. For that person, there are benefits to doing a race at the end of August because of the flexibility that they have. And another way, it may mean more beneficial for them to race during the school year in a shorter local event and then free up the summer for more adventure. Depends what your priorities are. But the parameters of the work responsibilities and life responsibilities that you have will set the tone for where we can go in terms of our racing. And it's important to factor those in. There's nothing really good about picking a race that you really wanted to do that doesn't work for anyone else in your life. Believe me, I've done it multiple times. I'm not very good at picking my races in a way that includes my family, and I often get friction for that, and deservedly so. So avoid that pitfall by making sure you've got that dialed in. All right. The next step number three, List your top 3 to 5, and I recommend 5 just because you can pick and choose performance goals, right? So, what are your performance goals relative to the target type of events that you've chosen, right? So, triathlon or running or cycling only. And then, based off of your opportunity for racing in those venues, what does that look like in terms of spacing for time? That will determine a general selection of races ish, but will also give you a sense of your performance goals. For example, if you're going to Okay, there we go. If your optimal window for racing um, is really in August and it's the hottest month for you to race, odds are you're not going to have a peak performance in terms of run time, for example, if you're in a running event. So that's not going to work for us, right? So let those conditions kind of set those parameters and let's pick some peak performance goals for you. Now, if you've done it by different event types, then you're going to have different goals based on each event type. You can simply set a new row, follow those same columns down by event types, and just put in some of those performance related goals for you, right? Performance related goals could range anything from improvements in sort of total time, improvements on particular elements, or just, sort of improved perceived exertion, right? Get better at hills, like be less afraid of hills. Become better at open water swimming as a performance goal. Get your open water swim down to a certain time as a triathlete. A performance related goal could be something related to body composition that may help multiple performance areas for you, depending on your sport choice and kind of where your starting point is. But come up with those goals based off of those different event types. Right? These are things that should excite you about the race. So not just racing for a medal, not just racing to go to a place, but this race brings a set of challenges. Those challenges are going to force you to adapt. That adaptation is going to make you choose training sessions and put a focus on things that are going to create opportunities for you. Let's factor that in and make sure we're using that as we go forward, right? Okay, great. Number 4 here, specify your races. It's time. Now we're ready. Okay, so instead of starting the race first, we started with event type. We talked about the timing of the year we can race. We started to write out some goals that really excite us. Now we can pick those races. Now we can say, you know what? I want to race in August. I want to do a triathlon, and I want a triathlon that's going to help me be fast on the bike. That's going to be these types of races here, the ones that I want to pick from. I really want to do this running race. I can only do running races in the wintertime, but I have budget flexibility. I'm going to pick this warm weather race over here because I have a speed goal. I want a net downhill race. So I want a speed goal associated with that in the winter so I can still achieve it, even though it's not great conditions where I live, right? So let's start using those general factors to help winnow down the selections. Because if you just go to a website and say, type in run races near me or type in marathons, the number of options that will exist for you out there on the planet are massive and will not help you make a good decision. We've already walked through the process. So step 4, pick those races. Again, you could just set another row below the top 2 ones already where we put in our event types. And then we put in below that our performance goals. Now we can actually start listing some races in those areas. So if your goal is to be fast on the bike and you can race in September, where do you want to go, right? Do you want to go to Chattanooga or you want to go to Wisconsin? Like which of those 2 ones do you want to go? If you're doing a gravel race and you want to cover 200 miles and you can only race in June, well, go find the 200 milers that are in June and let's figure those out and put those on the calendar, right? Or give us some options, right? Again, narrows things down for us, saves you a ton of time, and also keeps that alignment between the selections that you're making, but also the conditions through which will help you be successful because we've got an engaged, challenging process that's going to make you really excited to race. All right. And then basically, once all that work is done, we just start to work backwards to today. It doesn't need to be rocket science, but it does need to be consistent. If you're looking to have a goal that has you doing, a marathon, say sub 4 hours, we've got 4 months to do it. You've got the venue locked in. You know what the terrain is going to be like. You're 100% ready to get to work. Then we work backwards in the process saying, where am I now? Do our functional testing, begin the process of saying, this is my starting point. This is my desired endpoint. This is how much time I have. And then we get to work. That's the magic where Endurance Nation exists, where our coaching lives, that helps you bridge that gap and helps you make those changes, whether they're incremental and make sense on paper, they're linear, or whether they're exponential and it's non-paper oriented. The curve is, significantly different than what you see from a linear improvement graph, and requires, sort of creative thinking, adaptation on your part, perhaps an investment of additional time or money, depending on which element of your training environment will yield better outcomes, training time of day, training time overall, training equipment, race equipment, etc. And we can dive into those pieces. But again, just to recap here for you, the overall framework that we want you to think about is starting first by event type, making sure that we understand the event type that you're going to be doing and the elements associated with it. Based on the type, we move to the next space. This is where we talk about what are the windows when you can race? When in your life does racing actually make sense? Let's get those locked in so you can make sure that it fits in the general sense of all the things that are you, which also encompasses part of your endurance training. Then we go to the performance goals. This event, this time of year, what are my goals? What do I want to hit? What am I after? Then we pick our races, and then we get to work. I hope this is helpful for you. It's big picture, and I've specifically not actually written something down. You can always go back, re-listen to this again, 1.5 times speed. Sounds super funny. And actually walk through the process of creating the sheet for yourself and then moving forward from there. If you have questions, you're not part of the team, then go ahead, shoot me a DM. You can do that on Facebook. You can do that on YouTube. You can do that on Twitter. All those places where Team Endurance Nation lives, just Google us. Or if you're ready to get started, join us over at endurancenation.us/join, where you can create a membership and get to work. Start training with me, your fellow teammates, new teammates, awesome, super great people, and get you ready for that big race and that great season. Thanks for tuning in. This is Coach Patrick signing off. I'll see you next week with another Coach Videocast /podcast.